Thank you very much, Regan, and it's also really great to be here. Normally these Digicons, we're dealing with this crisis, this energy crisis, and it weighs heavily on all of us. But there's a sense of excitement being here today at this power plant, this hydropower plant, and I'm looking forward to some of the inputs, and it's great to have the mayor here as well as Philip. And we'll get into that just now. I think as we kick off, I would just like to say that we here in the Western Cape send our deepest condolences to the citizens of Gauteng and those families who have lost loved ones in that devastating fire. And it's terrible to just see that death toll climbing and climbing. So deep condolences to all of you in Gauteng. Thank you very much to those that are in there trying to save lives, those firefighters and those emergency personnel. That also brings back home to us to say we must make sure that anywhere in our own province where buildings are at risk, we need to make sure that our fire systems are checked, that we are always able to stay in a space where we know that should an emergency happen, we can deal with that. We cannot tolerate something like that happening here. And so we've got to make sure there are rules and regulations, and we've got to make sure we stick to those rules and regulations and be prepared. That's what risk management is all about. Perhaps also just before we get into the Digicon, just to say to everybody that tomorrow, finally, I've got a meeting. There's a meeting happening. It's the PCC, the Premier's Coordinating Council at national level. So I will be going to Gauteng early tomorrow morning, where we will be having a discussion on the general agenda items. But the most important thing that we've got onto that item is the financial risk that we are all facing at the moment, with a big downturn in the economy, driven not only by policy decisions, etc., but quite frankly, driven by load shedding and the impact of load shedding on businesses and households and our economy in general, and we are not getting the tax income because of it. And that has a huge knock-on effect on service delivery, and especially for us in our big departments like health and education, where the pressure is on and more people are coming for those kind of services to this province, let alone those that live here. And we need more and more money. And with the downturn in the economy, we've got to make sure that we get our fair share and mitigate the risk wherever possible. So that's the work cut out for us tomorrow. But today, it's about energy and energy provision. And I really think that the city of Cape Town mitigates levels of load shedding, and this is the reason why, this place that we're at. But that's not for me to talk about, that's for the mayor to talk about. So, Mayor, can I welcome you to this Digicon and hand over to you and say, it's great to be here. It's exciting, actually, to be in a facility like this that does mitigate this risk, helps, how many households keep the lights on, but how many jobs and, the knock-on effect of just having electricity.
Thank you very much, Premier. It's really nice to be here with you at Steenbras Hydroelectric Power Station. And thank you for a great idea of having the Digicon here, because I don't think enough Cape Townians get to celebrate this incredible facility. This is really a unique place. And we're going to hear from one of the stars who keeps it running, Philip and his team. And I just want to celebrate this team that keeps this place running in absolute tip-top shape. And one of the comments that we often get, Premier, is that, well, this place was built 40 years ago, or whatever it was. It is absolutely a wonderful old facility, but as you will see as we walk around today, it is in beautiful mint condition, and that is thanks to these team members of Team Cape Town. And that is the difference between this power station and so many other power stations in South Africa, that it is properly and well cared for and looked after, and it is still running as if it was built yesterday. Whereas our brand new power stations in South Africa, Medupi and Kusile, are still not working properly, even though they are many decades newer than this one. So here we have a power station that generates 160 megawatts of power for the city of Cape Town grid. It allows us to protect the whole city from one stage of load shedding always, and very often, most days during the peak hours, we protect from two stages of load shedding as well. And this is the station. This is our, as I said, our secret weapon that allows us to do that. And it allows us to do that using a very simple mechanism. At the top of the mountain is a dam that collects water. It allows water to flow down the dam through the hydroelectric turbines and generate electricity, and then collect water here at the bottom of the mountain in the lower dam, the lower reservoir. And that is why Regan correctly describes it as a massive battery, because what it essentially allows us to do is take power in the middle of the night when it is cheap and freely available in excess, use that power to pump water back up the mountain through big pipes. And then when we need that power in the day during peak times to mitigate load shedding, we allow it to flow down again. So it is a kind of battery, really a massive one of the biggest ones in the world, actually. And so the exciting future of this is to see how we can try to expand this lower dam, and there's some very cool work happening around that right now, because really the limiting factor here, the thing that determines the size of your battery, is the size actually of the lower dam. Once the lower dam is full, you can't pump anymore. And we have only really a couple of things we can do with the water. We can let the water go further down the mountain to our water treatment plant to use as fresh water. But our 4-row water treatment plant doesn't use water fast enough for the city to actually lower this level quickly enough. Or we can, of course, let the water go out to sea. And we've taken a decision that we can't possibly do that in Cape Town, where water is a very, very precious resource. So the alternative is to try and make this dam bigger, which is the important study that is busy going on right now.
Right. That's excellent. And again, I'm so excited to be here. But before we go any further, I think we just need to ask Albie Lester if he could come in. And we always need to go back to reality and the plan and where we are wanting to go to. So, Mr. Lester, can I hand over to you for the next stage of this Digicon?
Well, thank you very much, Premier, and thank you to the public that have joined us, and also members of the media and our colleagues, and welcome to the Mayor as well. It's always been a very good tool in the arsenal of the city to have the dam available. I think over the years it's really come into good use, and I think the upgrade is going to make a huge difference going forward as well. But Premier, if I just like to share a presentation again in terms of where we at for the performance of the week. If I look at the system, I think the first 2 slides really just the consistent slides that we indicate where we're at, what our goals are, and what we're going to achieve. What I have done, if I just move to the next slide, is in this slide, I'm just trying to indicate the amount of energy over the same window in 2022 versus 2023. And this is the energy dispatched from the generation plant in the country. And this is all dispatchable energy, which means it's not only the installed base of Eskom, which is the 46,000 megawatts, but it's all other contracted generation as well, which is in excess of 50,000 megawatts. The black line is an indication of what was dispatched in 2022. The blue line is what was the forecasted load, what they were anticipating would be required. And the red line, so the blue line is the anticipated requirement for 2023. And the red line is the actual dispatched throughout the year. The scales, you can see it's got the megawatts on the left-hand side. And at the bottom, you can see those are the weeks that run from week 1 up to week 52, 53. So what you'll look at is those particular weeks. And what's important to see in this particular presentation or this particular slide is if you look at week 22 and 23, and if you look at the black line, which was 2022, we were able to dispatch and send into the system close to 33,000 megawatts in 2022. In 2023, exactly the same week, if you look at what was available to us and what we were able to dispatch, we were only able to dispatch about 27, just under 28,000 megawatts. So there's a significant drop in the availability of energy, and you can see from year to year that the plant is not consistent. And this, again, this does not consider the load factor. This is really what is available to the system and they're able to dispatch. So you can see we consistently between 4,000 and 5,000 megawatts below where we were a year ago. Now, this should be concerning because, again, if you start to look at the growth factors in the country, this will definitely impact decisions around investment, development, and also businesses wanting to make investment in either increasing their capacity or the ability to actually produce additional products or services. If the energy isn't available, they're not going to make those decisions very quickly. So just a quick view in terms of what the energy availability was like in 2022 versus what is available in 2023 currently. A little bit closer to home, if I look at the last week's energy availability factor, again, you can see we're starting to drop. Week 33, we've dropped down to 56% availability. Last week we were sitting at 57. And again, if you look at it, there was additional planned maintenance that took place. So you can see that went up from 8.78% to about 9.5%. So it wasn't so much that the unplanned activity outstripped the planned. There was more planned maintenance taking place. And again, like I said last week, the closer we get to summer, the more we should expect that there will be more planned maintenance. Bottom line is availability of energy will still be low, whether you've got planned or unplanned. Planned is just the control measure. The unplanned is obviously the one that is concerning if that starts to spike. This week, if I look at again the performance this week, and if I look at the shift in the stages again, we've moved from stage 2 to stage 4 in a matter of 36 hours. Again, plant unavailability, the big factor, the volatility of the system, a big factor, and the fact that the unplanned factor is increasing over this week. We'll probably next week start to see the unplanned factor grow. For the week ahead, and again, this is looking at week 34, prognosis is that this is supposed to be, at the initial stages, the thinking was that this was going to be a red week. The assumption here is that you would start the summer maintenance program, and this would start to kick in, so your availability would drop. And I think we probably should expect that the maintenance will increase over the next few weeks. But also, if we don't get some of that plant back that went out over the last few days, the 3 units that was lost overnight, if we don't get those units back, we probably will see ourselves in stage 4 for the rest of this week and probably into the weekend as well. So prognosis is at least stage 4 for the rest of this week and into the weekend. And I think next week we'll probably see 2 to 4, but an increase in the planned maintenance activities for Eskom. Premier, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, bringing us back to earth. I felt my excitement of this place suddenly drain a little bit. I really hope we get those units back. It is critical for our economy and jobs. But we are here to see probably the next stage, which is going to be a video. So who's pushing the button? Great. Philip, I'm going to hand over to you. You could probably going to explain to us what was going on when that lever started coming up. That was obviously as it was picking up power. But over to you. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. It's a real honor to host you, the Premier, and the Mayor of City of Cape Town today at Steenbros Power Station. And thank you for the opportunity. I will take us through the workings of the power station with a brief explanation. So the Steenbros pump storage scheme with a rated capacity of 180 megawatts was commissioned in August of 1979 and has been operating ever since. It comprised of an intake work situated in the Steenbros upper dam, connected by a 1.6 kilometer single tunnel system through the mountain that is sitting just behind the power station, to the power station lower reservoir behind us, where we sit today, some 300 meters below the upper dam. Now, just behind the power station, we see that the penstock bifurcates into two, each of which further then divides into two, forming individual pipes servicing the four machines. The machines, each pump turbine is isolated from the penstock by means of a spherical valve. And Mr. Premier, that's the valve that we've just seen in the video. What we've seen there is the valve opening up, releasing the energy stored in the upper dam through the pump turbine, and as the Mayor has also described, then generating electricity into the city network. What controls the flow of water through the turbines is the guide vanes, controlled by a hydraulic servo motor, and that then obviously regulates the amount of energy that is sent from each individual unit into the grid. The machines are primarily operated in two modes, generating or pumping, each then either acting as a turbine generator or a pump motor. So in turbine generator, we will then run the water stored in the upper dam down, and in pump motor, we turn it around and we push the water back up again. At the rated output of 45 megawatts in gen mode, a turbine discharge 19 cubic meters of water per second into the lower reservoir. In pump mode, the machine discharges 14.5 cubic meters of water per second, returning the water stored temporarily in the lower reservoir during generating to the upper dam. So inside the plant, and we'll see that later when we walk through, we have two machine shafts at a depth of 46 meters, providing the necessary submergence below the minimum level of the lower dam to ensure proper hydraulic operation of the machines. The electrical operated gates, a similar configuration to what is installed in the upper controls or upper intake, is installed in the lower control and outlet works to isolate the individual draft tubes connecting each pump turbine to the lower reservoir. So you see in the pictures, I just put a little green around it for ease to follow. Then the machines are controlled from the power station control room. In addition, each individual machine can also be manually controlled from its own local control panel on the machine room floor. So when we look behind us, we will see on the west side where your vehicles were parked, the lower control works incorporate the chamber housing the cooling water and fire fighting pumps. The motor generators are salient pole synchronous machines of conventional design. The upper section of the turbine comprise a direct coupled pony motor, which, apart from its main function to start and stop, to start the machine in pump mode, is also used as dynamic brake when shutting down the machine in gen mode. This is required to shorten the period of changing from gen to pump mode. That is, otherwise it will take around about 15 to 20 minutes to do a change around. The isolation of each generator or a motor generator from the transmission system is achieved by means of a gas insulated metal clad switchgear isolator, which sits in the switch house. There's a little picture below. And then we also have a standby diesel generator set that ensures that electrical supply is available at all times for the station emergency drainage and dewatering pump systems to safeguard against possible flooding. The standby generator also provides the power station with a black start capability. The power station is connected to the CITES transmission system by means of a double 132 kilovolt overhead transmission line. And in the right at the bottom in the blue, you will see the power station, the 4 units, and then is connected up to Bartlett. Maintenance. So what do we do here? Steenbras has been exceptionally well maintained, as was mentioned by the mayor. This is the primary reason why Steenbras is still being able to operate beyond its original design life. The refurbishment of the pump turbines completed between 1990 and 1996 addressed wear, corrosion, and progressive misalignment due to expansion of concrete. And that is the single most significant maintenance intervention that was ever carried out on this plant. Apart from this, only minor replacements, retrofits, and routine maintenance were carried out on Steenbras. Maintenance is scheduled over weekends as far as reasonably practical. The plant is returned to service on the same day to allow for pumping on both Sunday and Saturday nights. The number of plant systems has reached, and in some cases past, their design expectancy. This is mainly due to the plant being 44 years old and in service. In addition to this, some design deficiencies in the generator rotor and the turbine has resulted in the plant not achieving its design output and reliability. And as the mayor indicated correctly, we're currently putting out 160 megawatts in the system, but the design was originally 180 megawatts. And that's where the refurbishment should bring us back to design capability again. In 2016, the department commissioned a plant health review to determine the status of the installed plant. A total of 16 systems and 75 subsystems across the plant and the 4 units were evaluated. The findings was used to develop a risk matrix consisting of more than 480 possible failures that could have an impact on OPEX, CAPEX, and revenue on Steenbras. These risks were ranked to highlight those with the greatest risk exposure to the city. The findings from this investigation is currently used to prioritize more intensive maintenance interventions and replacements that is programmed as part of our annual machine outage program. Here we see the operating strategy for pump gen cycle in winter. Normal dispatch if load shedding did not exist. So we can see the pumping cycle from midnight until around about 6 o'clock in the morning. Then we do peak load shifting from 6 o'clock to around about 10 o'clock. There's a valley period in between, and then another peak in the afternoon before we start pumping from just after 10 o'clock. Due to the price difference between peak standard and off-peak energy charges, it pays to run the plant at maximum capacity during winter high demand season. So here we see low demand seasons and high demand season, and where they sit on a 24-hour clock. So the winter load shifting plus mitigation scenario 1. There's many scenarios, but this is one of them. So we will pump at night, and we will then generate in the morning. In the afternoon, there will be 1 unit for peak, 3 for peak, and 1 for the load shedding mitigation. Scenario 2. We then see the load shedding scenario implemented at any given time is largely dependent on the energy capacity in the lower reservoir, the pumping capacity, as well as the peak load demand at the time. All these parameters are closely monitored and controlled by the city network control. Summer load shifting plus mitigation. During summer low demand seasons, 2 machines are reserved for load shedding mitigation and 1 unit for peak load shifting. The 4th unit is removed for service, for scheduled service, the 4-yearly maintenance. The weekly cycle with the 4 units in winter. So the total generating capacity available in the lower reservoir is just over 2,200 megawatt hours, or 12.5 generating hours at full station load. The lower reservoir storage capacity was increased in 1988, raising the maximum operating level from 85.5 meters to 86.8 meters. To meet the then weekly energy requirement. At the time, this increase was viable in order to cope with the daily demand and limited pumping time during weekday nights. Weekends provide extra pumping time to return all the water from the lower reservoir to the upper dam, allowing the energy cycle to be repeated in the following week. Transferring of bulk water from the lower reservoir to the water treatment plant started during December of 1997 and was further optimized this year. This intervention reduced the power station's weekly pumping time and increased the available generating hours in the lower reservoir during the week. Here we see just a graph on the right-hand side. You can see the energy remaining megawatt hours in the dam, the blue line, and you can see as we go through the week from Monday to Sunday, the energy remaining in the lower dam decreases on a daily basis. At night, you can see the effect of pumping, but as you've seen previously, I mentioned we basically send 19 cubic meters per second into the lower dam at full load, and we can only return 14.5. Hence, there's the cycle efficiency of the plant. So you require a little bit more pumping time than generating time to recharge your battery. On the right-hand side, you see the generating megawatts. So Timbra's our secret weapon. Applying the principle of energy arbitrage, storing energy in the upper dam, utilizing low-cost off-peak energy, which is then released during peak periods of demand for peak shifting, shields the city consumers from high energy costs from Eskom during winter periods. Steenbras is further strategic in that apart from the daily function of energy arbitrage, it also supports the network during periods of load shedding, bolstering the City of Cape Town's energy security by reducing the impact of load shedding on the economy. Our priority at the power station is to manage both the unplanned availability and the node change losses in order to ensure maximum plant reliability and availability at all times. Steenbras, our secret weapon, protecting the city customers from increasing energy costs and the impact of load shedding today, tomorrow, and into the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Great, thank you very much. Sure. It is, I think, as the mayor said, it was built a long time ago, but it just shows you that if you put the maintenance in, you can really get something like this to work to the absolute benefit of our citizens. And I think that's a critical lesson for South Africa in so many areas. But over to you, Regan. Take some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Abers. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Premier. Mr. Abers, for giving us some fascinating insights into how this facility actually works. I will now open the floor to those questions. I do note a few have already come through via WhatsApp and via Teams, so we'll work through them in order of when we receive them in the order. The first one that's come through here is probably best fielded by Mr. Abers. Maybe the Mayor can also weigh in on this. Is Steenbras Hydropower Station comprehensively insured against major risks? They didn't specify what kind of risks, but I think as a country we know what risks are and client these are, aren't we? Mr. Abers, maybe you could field that.
Yes, thank you, Regan. Yes, we are. The city do have risk insurance. We do risk insurance evaluations where companies would come to site. We take them through. They look at every possible angle of what risk exists in the city, whether that be a fire risk, a loss on the road of equipment that's being transported, and production losses, how that features into the system. That information we then utilize again, obviously to improve our maintenance and our preventative maintenance strategies going forward.
May anything to add?
No.
That's great. Thanks, Mr. Abers. Second one here that's come through, I just need to see who could be best could deal with this one. What is the plan with the refurbishment and the upgrade of Steenbras, Mr. Abers?
I think I can probably take that one, Mr. Abers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So as Mr. Abers has very well said, the plant is maintained on a continuous basis. Once a year, each one of the pumps is taken out of service, or turbines rather, so that every 4 years, each of the turbines is comprehensively maintained. At the moment, we are doing two things. The city is preparing a study on how we can best expand the size of this dam just behind us, so that we can increase the storage capacity of our battery. And we are preparing also for that major refurbishment in 2027. So there will be a major refurbishment of the plant in 2027. And we are hoping that we can coincide that work, since the plant will be out of action for that refurbishment. We can coincide that with the necessary earthworks and construction work that has to take place on the lower dam, if we decide to pursue that route.
Can I need this opportunity to ask a question too. So, May, is there a plan to expand the number of generating units? Because one would say that we've got this facility. If you've got more water storage, should we expand to more generation?
So the key constraint is the size of the lower dam. That is the size of your battery, Premier. So you can add more turbines. It just means that you're going to fill up the dam much quicker. So at the moment, I think we have about 12 hours of generating capacity here. Is that about right? And then the dam is full. If you add another generator, that might come down to 10 or 9 hours. So actually what we could do is get a lot more load shedding protection out of the facility if we just had more storage. And that's why we've spent so much time trying to get as much water out of here as possible into the Fora freshwater treatment works, so that we can use that for the city's water supply and then thereby lower the level of the dam. But as I think Mr. Davis has said, we end up on a Saturday, usually on a Friday or Saturday morning, with the dam nearly full, and then we got to start pumping up over the weekend. And that answers one of the other common questions I get: is why don't we offer the 2 stages of protection over weekends? And I think that has been perfectly answered now by the fact that we have to do more pumping on weekends so that it's ready for the next week. Because the most important thing is actually to protect jobs and the economy through the week when it's main working time.
Great. Question for the Premier and Mr. Lester, whether it's possible to look at other hydro power plants in the province. Is it maybe part of our energy resilience plan? And there's a related question here as well, Premier, that I think you and Mr. Lester could field. What are the other water-related projects that we may be thinking about at the Western Cape government, which will form part of the broader energy resilience plan?
So I will start. Remember, and maybe this is what Albie will also talk about, we're looking at our own RP. So what does our energy mix look like over the next 20, 50 years? And I'll let Albie carry on with that. But for me, what makes a lot of sense is saying, how do we put more plants like this in place? For example, in Ceres, where you've got a lot of agricultural demand. So are we going to build new dams for agriculture? At the same time, can we put generating capacity into a new dam? And I think that brings up another issue. So we need to look at water resilience going into much longer term visioning of 50 years and 100 years. And so where's the next dam going to be built? Or even the current, I mean, we've been waiting now since 2008 for the expansion of the Clanwilliam Dam. And at some stage, we're going to have to say, well, how do we step in now? Because we have to have that expansion. And then when the expansion happens, let's build hydro in at the same time. It makes sense. And, when I'm sitting listening to the presentation that Philip's doing, you're looking at just how, even if we're under normal circumstances, how we would mitigate peak from a cost point of view. It just makes so much sense. But then, of course, it's also there for when you really need it, like now, when we have energy shortfalls.
Okay. I do apologize. It's Mr. Lester.
No, thank you, Regan. So, yes, I think the Premier has covered quite a bit in terms of our RP and the mix we're looking at. We have, and we expect that in the RP, we will talk about long-term energy storage, where hydro does feature significantly. We've started the discussion with our colleagues in DLG to start to identify municipal-owned dams that we can start to engage around the potential for those to be expanded, for us to have some kind of battery facility at those. So we do expect those to be in the RP under the energy storage facility. For other sort of hydro opportunities, again, in the RP, we're looking at things like offshore wind. We're also looking at wave energy as options for the sort of long coastal line that we have in the Western Cape. So yes, we completely agnostic when it comes to the technology, and quite open to looking at what's available, what would be the cost of that type of energy, and then obviously the maturity and the geography of our province to accommodate those. Thanks, Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. A question from ENCA. Who's
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Abers, just to check if this power station also has, like Kuberg, an end-of-life deadline, so to speak, where you say beyond this point we cannot use it anymore, or there's a regulatory body that we have to apply for to be able to use it, or is it just maintenance on the go and you can use it for as long as that happens?
Thank you for the question. The plant has got a design life of 40 years. The fortunate thing with hydro pump storage, it can be extended for another 40 years, and it has been done internationally quite successfully. the civil works of such installation is where the cost is. So all you have to do, and what we plan to do as a city, is to basically refurbish the pump turbines, replacing large components, and that will then yield a further 20 to 40 years of lifetime in the power station. So the short answer to your question is no, it's not quite similar to Uber.
Thank you. We've got one more question on Teams here. It refers to a catastrophe that occurred in Russia in 2009. So the viewer asks, did the risk assessment consider lessons learned from the Suyano-Shishskaya power station incident in 2009? Did it consider the consequential environmental damage due to transformer oil contamination of the river downstream? So I think if we could apply this quite generally, when we talk about risk assessment with kind of facilities like this, do you take into account all kinds of risks?
Yes, certainly we do. There was the Russian power station that had an incident where the top cover of the pump turbine dislodged, virtually destroying an entire power plant. Those risks we do definitely consider, and we include that in our general maintenance, where we do full pump turbine, as we call the top cover lifts, replacing the pump turbine bolts or the critical components. Also, as mentioned, the transformer, the leaking of or possible oil contamination downstream into potable water systems. Each transformer obviously has got its own fund wall area to contain the oil, and that is then contained. We also have deep level drains in the system, which is completely separated from all the other waterways with scavenging. So, I mean, we are quite strictly monitored and controlled as far as the environment is concerned and how we manage the plant.
Thank you, Mr. Abers. And with that, we draw to conclusion the question and answer session. I'll now hand over to the Premier to introduce Mr. Lester.
I'll introduce Mr. Lester, and we'll end with Mr. Lester's tip of the week. But if I can just, in closing, say thank you very much to the Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Abers. It's really great to be here. I'm looking forward to the tour of this facility. And thank you very much to all of you, the citizens, the media who join us every week on this Digicon. Thank you for your time. And we once again hope you find this useful. And please don't hold back. If there's something that's really burning and you want us to deal with it, please send it through on any of the platforms, and we can include that in the agenda in a future Digicon. But with that, I want to say thank you, and I'll hand over to Mr. Lester for his tip of the week.
Well, thank you, Premier. So I want to deal with space heating this morning, and really just to say that it's quite critical for citizens and even businesses to look at insulating their ceilings. I mean, studies indicate that we lose about 40% of our heat through the roof. So in the winter, it really would act as a heat insulator, and in the summer, it will then act as a cooling insulator. So again, I think if people haven't done this, it's quite critical for you to start doing this, because instead of putting on heaters for longer periods or air cons for longer periods, if the ceilings are insulated, we'll save about 40% of our energy. Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Deegan.
Good tip.